So we started to do the section which is 22a, about the 10th song. And we said that throughout history, there are 10 places where there were miracles that happened. Hashem showed the Jewish people his kindness on a very large scale. And because of that, they sang songs of thanksgiving and praise to Hashem. And even though there are so many different things that happen throughout history, but the Gemara says, generally speaking, there are 9 such situations which stand out. And those are the 9 primary songs. When Moshiach comes, we'll also be singing a song, and that'll be the 10th song. It'll be complete. So I just wanted to go through with you the 9 songs. Most of it I think you're aware of, but let's put it all together. So there are 2 or 3 pages here, which I'm wondering why I put them in, but I'll tell you which ones, we'll skip it. The first one is on page number 5. What happened?
I was asking if there's more. There's one right here.
See how a lot of times good things are right in front of your nose.
Yeah, I know.
When my grandson got engaged to Hendel, who lives 3 doors away, that's what people are saying. Right under your nose, next door.
I know.
Okay. So the first one's on page 5. This is in the Chumash itself. Oz Yosher Moshe Bnei Yisrael. Moshe and the children of Israel sang to Hashem, and they said these words of song and praise for the miracles of us going out of Egypt and the miracle of splitting of the sea. And this is the first song that we know about in the Chumash. In the same portion, after the men finished singing their song, then Miriam, look at the next page, that's also the same thing, but it's considered a separate song, which was sung by Miriam and all the women. Miriam, the prophetess, she's a sister of Aaron, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women came out after her with tambourines and with dances. By the way, anybody know why it says she's the sister of Aaron? She's also the sister of Moshe. Well, Rashi says that when she was a little girl, she was already prophesizing, and she prophesied and told her father that in the future, their mother is going to give birth to a baby, and this baby is going to grow up to be the one who will take the Jewish people out of Egypt. And that was like 80 years later. So it means she prophesied while she was still with the sister of Aaron before she became the sister of Moshe. And that's why she's written down as the sister of Aaron. So this is the second song. Then we turn the page. There's the third song on page 7. This is also in the Chumash itself, in the book of Bamidbar. And over there you can see, look at the number 17. Oz Yosha Yisrael Sashir Azais. And then the Jewish people sang this song, Ali Be'er Enolah. It's a song about a miracle that happened. Again, there was an attempt by the enemies of the Yidden to would cause a mass murder of so many thousands of Jews. Hashem performed the miracle, and they were killed. And then the Yidden sang the song, details to this, how the miracle became known to them through the water, through a certain well. So they sang the song about the well that revealed the miracle that Hashem performed. The Gemara says that every person doesn't realize it, but there are miracles happening all the time. We just don't know that there was a miracle. We don't know something could have happened, something was supposed to happen, and then it didn't happen. Sometimes Hashem reveals to us that we should actually acknowledge and recognize that there was a miracle here. Same thing happened there. There was a miracle. And initially, it could have gone by in a way that no one would have known that there was an attempt to do something. Very often you hear in the newspaper, just now they had something in London, that there was an attempt to make this massive terrorist attack on the Israeli embassy in London. And then Baruch Hashem, they caught it before it took off. It would have been massive, God forbid. But imagine, it wouldn't be in the newspaper. No one would even know that there was an attempt, that something could have happened, something would have happened. But the fact that it was found and exposed and stopped is all part of the miracle. Then page 8 is also in the Chumash. In fact, there's a whole parsha that's called Parshat Hazinu. This is at the end of the Torah, close to the end. And this is a song that was sung because Moshe was completing the Torah. So they sang this song praising Hashem for now that we have the completion of Torah. So I think by now we have 4. This is the 4th song. Then we turn the page. And page 9. It's really continuation for page 10. So really 9 should have been... Oh, actually here it's in the right order. Good. So basically, no, it's wrong order. Number 10 should have been 9, and number 9 should have been 10. It starts on the bottom. This was a big miracle that happened, that there was a war going on, and this was Yehoshua, Moshe Rabbeinu's successor, and the war came to a point where they almost defeated the enemy completely. And as they were about to do sort of the last few hours defeating the enemy, night came, and at night they couldn't continue. Today, we have, with modern technology, they have things that they could see at night. They didn't have it in those days. So Yeshua did something different. He stopped the sun. It shouldn't go down, it shouldn't set. Easy. So the sun continued to shine, and he had the opportunity to finish the war. And here you have the pasuk. It says in pasuk 13. No, look at pasuk 12, the one that's number 10. And Yeshua spoke to Hashem on the day when Hashem delivered the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, sun, stand still upon Gibon, and moon in the valley of Elam. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. And it says that this was a miracle. Number 14, and there was no day like this before or after that Hashem listened to the voice of man, for Hashem fought for Israel. So they sang a song to thank Hashem for this miracle, which is an unprecedented miracle. That's number 5. Let's turn the page. Devorah. One of the prophetess was there's a book in the book of Judges, the book of Shoftim, was a woman. She was the leader of the Jewish people at that time, Devorah. And there was also, again, a war with one of the enemies of the Jews. After the war was won, she sang a song, Vatosha Devorah. She sang a song about the miracles that happened in this war. In fact, we read this the week of Beshalach, the week when we read about the song that they sang by the splitting of the sea. We also always read Haftorah. Haftorah is something from the books of the prophets. So we always find something in the prophets that's similar to the story in the Chumash. So we read this about the song that Devorah sang. Number 12, we know that King David had many wars. In fact, that's the reason why Hashem said he wants the Beis HaMikdash to be built by King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, not King David. King David was the one who arranged all the plans, and Hashem gave him all the details on how to build the Beis HaMikdash. He wrote up all the plans, he prepared everything. But Hashem says because he fought so many wars and he had blood on his hands, even though it was for the purpose of protecting Bnei Yisrael, but still it was wars, and still there was blood on his hands. Hashem said, I don't want that the hands that have blood on their hands should build the Beis HaMikdash. So what he did was he got rid of the enemies. As a result of that, the next generation, when his son Shlomo became the king, that's when there was peace. And therefore, that was the generation of the Beis HaMikdash. So David HaMelech also sang a song where Hashem saved him from all his enemies. And that's number 12. In fact, we have something similar to this in Tehillim. If you look at the Tehillim chapter 18, that's the same song. It's in the Tehillim. The words are a little bit different, but it's almost identical to what it says here. So I think we're up to number 7. not 13, but look at page 14. This is something which we have in the davening. Mizmor Shir Chanukas Habayis LeDavid. This is the song that they sang when they built the Beis Hamikdash. So they sang a song of praise that this is the first time in history that we have a permanent dwelling place for Hashem, which is the Beis Hamikdash. So this is number 8. And then the last one is what is called the Song of All Songs, and that's Shir HaShirim, which is written by Shlomo HaMelech. And this is a song which is, the whole book of Shir HaShirim is describing the love of Hashem to the Yidden to Hashem, comparing it to husband and wife, and comparing it to a chassan and a kala. And like it says, Rabbi Akiva, when he would read Shir HaShirim, the beauty in the words and the depth in the words and the deep secrets in these words was so overwhelming that tears would be gushing from his eyes because of the overwhelming feeling when he did this Shir HaShirim. So we have 9 songs. When Mashiach will come, will be the 10th song. But one of the differences between Mashiach's song, what we'll sing then and now, is one of the things which I think it came up earlier, if not, maybe not everyone was here when we spoke about it, and that is when it says in the Chumash that, well, let me show it to you inside actually, you can see this. Let's go back to the first page, we had the first song that Moshe sang, right? Page 5. Look at the Hebrew. Oz Yosher Moshe, and then Moshe sang. Moshe and the Bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people, at Hashira HaZois. Anyone familiar? Zois is masculine or feminine? Feminine. Who sang the song? The men or the women? So it should have been masculine. Why is it feminine? Let's look at the next page where it describes Miriam's song, where it says, look at Pasuk 21. Vatan Lohem Miriam, and Miriam called out to them. The word Lohem with a mem is masculine or feminine? Masculine. Who's singing the song? Miriam. So it's feminine, masculine. So one of the answers that are given is that in the reference to the song, the women were much stronger than the men, meaning that the men began to sing the song to praise Hashem for the miracles when they saw the miracle. The sea split. They were still worried, and they thought, just like we got out of the river, the sea, the Egyptians are coming after us also. So only after they saw that, no, they came out of the sea alive, and the Egyptians were not coming out alive. Then it says they began to sing. What about the women? So Miriam and her women, they already prepared musical instruments before they even left Mitzrayim, which means they were so confident that Hashem is going to perform miracles for them. They were ready to sing before they even saw the miracle happen. The men waited until they saw it with their eyes. Okay, now we can sing. So it means that in this aspect, the women were stronger than the men. And that's why by the women, it uses masculine, and by the men, it uses feminine. However, the Medrash says that when Mashiach will come, then everyone will be like Miriam was, that not only that we'll have the confidence that Hashem is coming, we'll already be singing about redemption even before it actually happens, which is what we're doing now. In other words, when the Rebbe, for example, told us that we should be calling out to Hashem and saying Ad Mosai, we'll talk about this tomorrow a lot because it's related to Pesach Sheni. The Rebbe insisted that we sing. The word Ad Mosai really is an outcry of pain. Hashem, how much longer could it be in Golus, right? We're screaming out of pain. Instead of screaming, we're singing. How does that fit in? And the answer is because at the same time that we're begging Hashem and pleading with Him, please, enough is enough, at the same time we're demonstrating that we have absolute faith and confidence in Hashem that He's going to take us out of Golus. So therefore, it goes together with the singing. And that's what Miriam taught us when the Yidden were coming out of the Mitzrayim. Okay, so now we'll go to another subject. By the way, this list that I gave you with all the terms, so we have another thing to check off now. And that is number, let me find it. Number 51. Number 51 is Shira or Asiris. The 10th song. It's not about Jewish Shira, don't worry. This is about the song. So if you hear someone use the term the 10th song, that's usually what they're referring to. And there's other things that it says that there was so much, actually all the same numbers. I think I mentioned the red heifer that was used in order to purify someone that's impure. So the ashes that they used lasted for many, many years. The two Beis Hamikdash altogether stood for close to 1,000 years. So the Gemara says that all those years, they only did this sacrifice called the red heifer, Parah Aduma, 9 times. When Mashiach comes, we're all impure right now, and then we have to go into the Beis Hamikdash, so we'll have to be purified. Then Moshe Rabbeinu, Mashiach, together they'll make a 10th one, which will be the 10th red heifer. So the same idea. Here it says there are 9 songs, and this is the 10th. This is the 10th. And if I'm not mistaken, there's another list of things that it says throughout the Golos, there were 9 of them. Mashiach comes, will be the 10th. Okay, we'll now go to 22b, the feast when Mashiach comes. Finally, we're getting to the food. Okay. So it says when Mashiach comes, we'll be celebrating and make a big feast, just like every Yom Tov. Shabbos, we have a meal. We celebrate Pesach by making a Seder. We have a meal at night. We have a meal by day. When it comes to Shavuos and we're celebrating the Torah, we have a meal at night. We have a meal at day. When it comes to Sukkot, we're celebrating that holiday. If there are meals, the only holiday that we don't celebrate with a meal, which one is that? Yom Kippur. But even that one, the day before, we make sure to have a double meal. So we make up for it. So when Mashiach comes, there'll also be a meal. There'll be a big feast. And there's a lot of medrashim of what's going to happen by that feast. And different questions whether the way it is described is, but basically at a feast, at a meal, you have fish, you have meat, and you have wine. So at this meal, there'll also be fish, but it'll be something unique. There'll be meat, it'll be something unique. And there'll be wine, will also be something unique. So let me show you the words, and you can write it down in your notes. It's also on the list. These are the 3, this is the menu for the feast, so you know in advance what's going to be. You don't have to think. Usually you go to the restaurant, you have to spend a lot of time thinking what you want. So I want you to know in advance what you're going to have. I'll be serving fish, meat, and wine. So, where is it? Let's find them. The menu, 18 is the fish, and it's called Libyasan. That's the name of the fish. 19 is the wine, called Yayin HaMeshumer. I'll soon explain them. And 20 is the meat, and the meat is called Shor Habar. By Libyasan, you can write a big whale. 19, which says Yayin HaMeshumer, means ancient preserved wine, wine that Hashem preserved. We know that wine, the longer it stands, the better it tastes. This wine, Hashem already preserved from the beginning of creation. And number 20 is Sher Habar, which means a wild ox. That's the meat. What? There's going to be a big fight in all the companies. Who's going to be the one to give the supervision? Because this will be a good deal, a lot of money. Yes, sorry. Here's a packet. Yeah. This will be a kosher whale. We just put the sticker on, say. Well, that's Rabbi Hanoka. He does with supervision, he'll give the sticker. Yeah, so again, there's a lot that's written about this, but there are different opinions of, is this something that's going to happen literally? Is this all a metaphor? And it's both. It could be literal, and it's also something that has much deeper meaning to it. I want to go to one part which is a little bit easier to follow, even though it's the end of the meal, and then we'll go back to the beginning of the meal. A very interesting thing that the Gemara says will happen at the end of the meal. At the end of the meal, every meal, when there are a lot of people, a lot of men by the meal, we make the Birchas Hamazon, the grace after meal, the benching, is with a cup of wine. It's called Kois Shel Bracha, the cup of blessing. So someone leads the benching with a cup of wine. At the end of this meal, they'll also be doing the same thing. So let's look at what's going to happen. If you keep turning the pages, come to page number 5. That's a medrash that describes what will happen at that time. On top of the page, it says, I'll read it in the English. Rabbi Avira taught, sometimes he said this exposition citing Rav Ami. The Gemara is very precise that when you say something, words of Torah, to give it over in the name of who is the one that said it. In other words, sometimes you find the Gemara said that this rabbi heard it from that rabbi, heard it from a third rabbi, who got it from a fourth rabbi. Very important to give over the source where you got it from. And he said, what is the meaning where it says, and the child grew and was weaned? It means that Abraham made a big feast on the day that Yitzchak was weaned. And basically, it was a big miracle that Yitzchak was born. Abraham was 100 years old, and Sarah was 90 years old, and now they had a baby. So it was a very big miracle. And all the people saw Hashem's miracle that they had this baby. And therefore, when the baby was 2 years old and weaned off from the milk of his mother, he made a big festival, a big festivity, and everyone came and they spoke about Hashem's miracles. That's what happened then. But the Gemara says this is also alluding to something about the future. In the future, Hashem will prepare a feast for the righteous on the day that he extends his mercy to descendants of Isaac. In other words, this is when Isaac was weaned off the milk of his mother. And that'll be when we'll be weaned off from Golus. We'll no longer be involved with Golus, and we're descendants of Yitzchak. After they eat and drink, then the people will give Abraham the cup of blessing and say, okay, you do the benching. Abraham was the first Jew. So Abraham will say, no, I will not recite the blessing because there's something with me that's incomplete. I had a son, Yishmael, and Yishmael is a person who is not the opposite of a tzaddik, and therefore I'm not suitable for giving this blessing. So who will? Isaac, Yitzchak. So Abraham said to Yitzchak, take the cup and recite the blessing. So Yitzchak said, I won't recite the blessing either, because I had a son whose name is Esau. He came from me. So then Yitzchak will turn to his son, Yaakov, and say, okay, you do the blessing. So Yaakov will say, I won't do the blessing because I married 2 sisters. Rachel and Leah were both sisters. How was he allowed to marry 2 sisters? Because this is before the Torah was given. But being that I married 2 sisters, and in the future the Torah prohibited one to marry 2 sisters, so therefore I'm not the appropriate person to make this blessing. So they'll turn to Moshe and they'll say, okay, Moshe, you do the blessing. So Moshe will say, no, I'm not going to do the blessing because I didn't merit to go into Eretz Yisrael, not during his lifetime, not even after he wasn't buried in Israel, he was buried outside of Israel. So therefore, he's not suitable to give this blessing. So they're going to turn to Yoshua, Moshe's successor, and they'll say to him, you do the blessing. He says, no, I'm also not going to do the blessing because I didn't merit to have a son that's going to succeed me. And then they're going to turn to David HaMelech, King David, and they say, you do the blessing. And King David will say, yeah, I'm going to do the blessing. And I am suitable to do the blessing. And it says in Tehillim, Kais Yeshuas Esa, I will lift the cup of salvation, of V'Shem Hashem Ekra, and in the name of Hashem I will call. Of course, it's not about Chas v'Shalom arrogance, oh, I deserve, but it means to show that the cup of blessing is related to King David. There's a lot of places in Chassidus how it explains that King David's attribute was Malchus. royalty. And again, this is not the place to go into it, that a cup which holds in it wine, the cup represents royalty, the attribute of royalty. So therefore, he was the perfect person to do this recitation of the brachas on the cup of wine. So now let's see what happens by this banquet, as they call it. I have to explain it first, then maybe we'll read. What's written here is from the book that's called The Days of Mashiach, but it's all taken from the Sichos, the talks of the Rebbe. Basically, it says in the Medrash that there's a Leviasa means a whale, but not an ordinary whale, a whale which is huge, and Hashem created this whale. He also created a male and female, but the female Hashem took away because otherwise they would have children and they would destroy the whole world because they're huge monsters. So Hashem only had the male. And this male is also hidden from us. These are the words in the Medrash. And when Mashiach comes, that's going to be the fish that we're going to have when Mashiach comes. And also another animal, which is a shor habar, which means a huge ox, a wild ox. Again, wherever it exists, we don't know, but it's not going to be revealed to us until Mashiach comes. And then it says when Mashiach comes, there'll be some sort of, just like in everything is like a metaphor for things that go on in our lives. There are times where people do things for entertainment with animals and they perform, or they're challenging each other. We'll see that these two animals challenging each other, the fish and the wild ox. And there's no doubt, if this is what's going to happen, all the tzaddikim are going to sit and watch, there's got to be something more to it than just this. So there's a lot of places in Chassidus that go into what's the deeper meaning of all this. And basically it explains that the fish, it's a meal and a festive meal for tzaddikim, for the righteous. That there are two categories of righteous people. One category is righteous people that are compared to fish. And there's another category of righteous people that are compared to an ox. What does that mean? The general difference between what goes on in an ocean, in a river, what goes on the dry land, is that things that exist, that are in the water, are covered up, they're hidden. We don't see it. Today, we have methods that they never had before where they can do deep sea diving, and we find things and we see things that with no eye ever saw those things years ago. It was all hidden. Now we can see it. But even though we can see it, it's by going down there and exploring, but in essence, the water covers up whatever is in the water. You can't even know that there's something there. What's out on the ground is exposed. One of the differences when it comes to tzaddikim is there are two types of tzaddikim, which means there's one type that they serve Hashem in a way which is open, and there's another type that they serve Hashem which is hidden. First of all, it can mean a lot of things, but first of all, it could mean, and you must have heard this somewhere, someplace along the line, that it says that in every generation there are 36 hidden tzaddikim. What does it mean, hidden tzaddikim? It means these are people that are righteous. The whole world is sustained in their merit, but nobody knows that they're tzaddikim. Outwardly, they look like simple people and simple Jews. Some of them even appear to be like people that are ignorant. And in reality, they're very, very great tzaddikim, and they lead their life in a hidden way. Nobody knows. What? No, they look from, yeah, they're not, God forbid, doing anything which violates Torah, but they don't look like there's anything special about them. They look like they're regular people. They do regular jobs, but in reality, they're living a different life, which we don't see on the outside.
But you can feel if someone's tzaddik.
We can feel?
Yeah, you can feel it, but you see someone and you can feel it.
In fact, there might be someone in this room, you don't have to identify yourself, but if you're one of those hidden tzaddikim, they look like everybody else, but in reality, they're tzaddikim.
Do they know they're tzaddikim?
Now, of course, they know, and they know that their identity has to be hidden. In fact, just like fish can't live if they go out of the water, these tzaddikim can only live if their identity is hidden. There are stories of certain tzaddikim, which were hidden tzaddikim, that for one reason or another, they had to expose themselves and identify themselves, and after that, they passed away.
So that's why they don't reveal there to be.
They're not, yeah, their way, just like Hashem created fish that live in the water and they're constantly under the water, and that's where they can live. There's certain tzaddikim that their spiritual purpose is fulfilled in this hidden way.
But do they do things to like bring Moshiach?
Yeah, they do things spiritually, they affect the world spiritually. In fact, the Gemara says that the world is sustained by these 30 tzaddikim. Has to be at least 36 in every generation. But they do it in a way that we don't see it, we don't know it, and they're doing it.
There's at least
36.
36.
There must to be
What?
there must to be leaders.
Tzaddikim.
Yeah, I don't know, like maybe in like the cut, like inside.
I mean, on the outside, no. Outside, I'm sure they're not doing anything which is on the outside violating Torah. But they seem to be simple, like they're not learned, they're not doing anything special. That's the way it appears to be. Like just to give an example, the Baal Shem Tov himself, the Baal Shem Tov, before he became known as the Baal Shem Tov, in fact, it's interesting, he was a hidden tzaddik until the age of 36, the same number. He was a hidden tzaddik until the age of 36. And at the age of 36, that's when he came out on the open, which means he had a part of his life that his mission was to act in a hidden way. And there was a part of his life that his mission was to act in a revealed way. But to give an example, one of the stories, except again, he was a different kind of hidden tzaddik, because his mission was eventually to come out in the open. But I don't know if you ever heard the name of a great tzaddik who was called the Shpola Zayda. You heard the name? He was a very big tzaddik. A lot of people here in the neighborhood that are actually descendants of him. He had a very big miracle where his life was saved, and he gave this request to all his descendants that on that day they should all make a celebration. So different people who are descendants of the Shpola Zayda come together on that date. It's the middle of Shvat, and they have a descendant here in Israel and America. I have family members that are descendants. In other words, family members that married into our family, they're descendants of the Shpola Zayda. So this Shpola Zayda is a story about how he came into the world. That the Baal Shem Tov and his wife, they were both great tzaddikim, but he traveled from one place to the other. What did he do for a living? He had a horse and wagon, used to fill it up with sand, and people who needed sand for building, for whatever they need, construction, he would sell them the sand. That's what he did. And at one point, they saw that the horse that they have is getting weaker and weaker, and they won't be able to do much more of pulling this wagon, and that means they're going to lose their source of income. And they heard that there's a Jew who lives not far from here. He runs an inn, and this Jew is a very kind person. If someone comes to his inn and he sees that their horse is not strong and can't really keep up, he will give them a good horse, a new horse that's healthy, and take away the old one. So they decided to go to him. He came to his inn, and instead of giving them a room, he said, in my inn, I have a rule that unless I know that the two people are actually married to each other, I don't allow them to be in the same room. So you have to be in a separate room, and this woman, you say, is your wife, will be in a separate room. So they went to two separate rooms. He had no idea that this is the Baal Shem Tov. Anyway, in the middle of the night, he wakes up and he sees there's a fire. He runs out to see what's going on and what's on fire. But instead of seeing a fire, he sees the Baal Shem Tov sitting in a room. Next to him, there's another person which he didn't recognize that was standing next to him. And they're both studying, and the room is lit up with such a fire. And I realized this is not an ordinary person. And he was so overwhelmed that he fainted. The Baal Shem Tov woke him up. And then when he realized who the Baal Shem Tov is, he begged him for forgiveness. And then he said, and forgive me for asking this question. Who was that other person standing next to you? He didn't come to my inn. So Baal Shem Tov said, you are a descendant of the Maral of Prague. Maharal of Prague was one of the great leaders of Jewry 400 years ago in Prague. His name was Rabbi Yehuda Lowy, and that man was actually descended and said, he is the one who is with me in this room. Being that you saw him, that was normally you shouldn't have even seen. And normally he wouldn't even see that there was a light. The fact that he saw all this was was because obviously he was a very pious person and he deserved to see it. And he said to him, I want you to know, I think they had no children. He gave him a bracha that next year your wife will give birth to a boy. And you'll give him a name after this rabbi, Yehuda, the same name. And then I want you to invite me to the bris. Don't start the bris until I come. And then he told him that when I do come, do not show that you recognize me. Shah. Thank you. Don't show him that you recognize me. Don't show him that you even know who I am. Act as if I'm just a regular beggar like all the other beggars that are there. So anyway, his wife had a boy. They made the bris. And they're waiting. What are you waiting for? He's waiting. And he's waiting because he knows the Baal Shem Tov has to come. And sure enough, he walks in. He looks like any other one of the beggars. And they did the bris. And the custom was, after they do the bris, they would pass the baby around from one person to the next. Every person should give a blessing to the baby. When it came to him, he said, he pretended he's a simple Jew. So he interpreted something in a very simple way. At least they thought it was simple. And he said, it says in the Chumash, Avram Zokein Bayom. Avram was older and he came to his days. So Avram was a Zayda. Zayda is the Yiddish word for grandfather. So this baby should also grow up to be a Zayda. Everybody started to laugh, like the way he interpreted the words. But at the end, this is what became his name, Shpala Zayda. That's why they called him by that name. And I actually met people, their last name is Zayda because they're descendants of this Shpala Zayda. But this is an example of someone who lives like a hidden tzaddik and no one knows about it. And if someone does find out about it, they have a merit. In this case, it didn't affect him, but there are other stories where after the hidden tzaddik, I'll just give you one more story. When the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe wanted to have someone who was a great tzaddik to give his consent that he agrees and he approves of what was written. So he went to Reb Zusha of Anapol and Reb Yehuda Leib, two great tzaddikim, they should give the consent. Then he asked a certain chassid, said, I want you to go to this city, told him which city, and I want you to go into the theater there and take my manuscripts of Tanya. There's going to be a show in the theater, but after the show, there'll be somebody cleaning up. Walk over to him and show him the manuscripts. First of all, a chassid in the theater was like you don't find a chassid sitting in the theater. Second of all, who is he going to show it to? The superintendent who's cleaning up. Okay. So he came to the place, and there's a show going on. He waits till it's over. Everybody leaves, and he sees someone coming around cleaning up. And he walks over and says, the Alter Rebbe sent me with these, he feels very awkward. Who's he talking to? But the Alter Rebbe sent me with these manuscripts and wants you to look at it. And he said, he found me here also? Okay. He looked at it. Yeah, it's good. Tell him it's good. And he went back. Who was it? Obviously, it was a hidden tzaddik. The Alter Rebbe wanted to get his consent. Okay, to be continued.
Thank you, Rabbi Majeski.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, fantastic. It says, when my writing is not always great. Are you offering right now, please? I'm so sorry. No, they're perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. Where did you get yours? I knew it. I was gonna like, I was like, oh my gosh, I really need to change shoes like that. Because it's maybe good green, but. Summer. Yeah. I'll just head out to my guys and friends. Okay. ¿Prefiero ir a tu casa? ¿Dónde estás?